Hey guys, today I'm looking at Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is kind of a weird game for me because I did enjoy the original Final Fantasy VII, but the remake version is just, I don't know. There's something about it that just seems kind of off. I mean, so first of all, this as a cinematic experience, everything looks wonderful. Everything looks perfect. Everything looks exactly as it should in terms of graphics, style, character designs. They didn't add anything stupid or weird or whatever. And like graphically, this is what the game looked like in our minds back in 97. This is what we interpreted the characters to actually look like, and it makes sense to us. It's really, really cool to see it. Of course, there are some scenes where, the original Final Fantasy used a lot of, how I would say, like sprites and sort of chibi characters in order to convey messages. So how they do it in this version is kind of funny because they need to interpret some of those scenes, but overall it's pretty entertaining. So again, the whole like dream, like this is the dream, right? The idea that we're going to get to a point where Final Fantasy is actually a live action action game rather than a turn-based strategy game, and now other people and like normies will get into it, and other people's that's cool will be like, oh wow, that's actually looks really cool. And the issue is, I guess for me, is that I don't know, this version of the game, I feel like it has the same syndrome that I didn't like Final Fantasy 15, which is that like it's very floaty combat, and so it's basically a version of 15 that's like masquerading as 7. And again, it looks really nice, it feels really nice, but at the end of the day, this kind of is a movie game, which is what Final Fantasy VII was kind of aiming to be to begin with. But it also had the game portion, and yes, you have ATB, you have this whole thing where you can pause the game and select your thing, so it also has an homage to like the menus. Everything here looks and works exactly how it would if I was in charge in directing the game. It does exactly what a proper remake should do and updates the gameplay, but for some reason I'm just not really into it, and maybe there's two reasons for that. One reason for that would be that, I've already played this game, I already know the story, and they're kind of making it, again, not super, actiony. They're kind of having more of a cinematic experience, and they're just there to look flashy and be cool. The second reason is that the story in this game is not Final Fantasy VII. A lot of people were surprised by this because I feel like a lot of people back in the day simply did not bother playing FF7 all the way through, or even the first area. Like everyone knows FF7, everyone knows Cloud, but how many people have actually played it? And I was really shocking to me that right out the gate, like they introduced time ghosts, and they make it abundantly clear right off the bat that this is not Final Fantasy VII retold. This is their fan fiction. And they're basically saying the time ghosts are essentially their version of like another timeline where they're trying to make sure everything goes according to plan. So really this is a treat for old Final Fantasy, players, because they're getting kind of a new story, but they're also getting something new for new players. So it gets them their original experience, and it's not bogged down by storytelling conventions of the 90s or something. So I understand and appreciate from that perspective, but it also is so stupid and cheesy, and it shows in their like description the time ghosts can't read, and it just like what is going on, I don't know. I kind of enjoy what they did with some of the characterizations, the fact that Jesse and Cloud kind of have this different kind of more intimate relationship, and they kind of go off on the side story to help Jesse's mom and this like motorcycle gang and whatever, and they kind of added that little bit in, and it's like, okay, that's kind of cool. But I don't know, just the dialogue here and the pacing of the game and everything else, and they changed certain things that really just twist me the wrong way. For example, what really got to me out of all the changes was the fact that in the opening sequence, when you're trying to blow up the Mako reactor, they have it set up so that the government and Shinra already knew about it, and the general blows it up for you when your bomb fails. So even though when you think you succeeded and you take credit for the attack, it wasn't actually you that did it. So you don't have the moral impetus that you caused all this suffering in the city, I guess. It's so bizarre and so petty that they changed that. Like, no, you did blow up the reactor. You are terrorists. You are a mercenary working for terrorists. This is what is supposed to happen. Then they're like, the bad guys actually blew up the reactor, so you don't have to feel bad, even though it was your intention all along. It was so very dumb, and I never really got over it. And I just realized, okay, fine, whatever. You know, this is a fan fiction. We're just going with it. You know, we're just feeling it out. Everything's off the table. You know, Sephiroth appears in the first 10 minutes and molests Cloud. And they're doing their whole fan fiction thing. I threw my hands and said, okay, all right, we're doing this. It's kind of like anything's off the table. Anything's on the table. But yeah, I don't know. Again, I think I love all the redesigns. Cloud looks perfect. Tifa, Aerith, etc. Everyone looks perfect. Even all the side characters like Biggs and Wedge. I love those guys. Everything looks exactly as it should. And again, I feel like this game is just very boring to me. It's a great cinematic experience. Like, you can watch this game because playing it doesn't feel very different. And I can't put my finger on why exactly it feels that way and why that is. And I like the stagger mechanic they introduced, but I don't know. It feels like I'm just pressing square over and over and over again to like win the battle. I feel like there's not a ton of strategy. And again, the story is, you know, it's doing its own thing. It does not care what you think about it, you know? But yeah, it looks really, really nice. There's one section in this game, though, that I think really hammers down why I didn't enjoy this game as an experience compared to the original, is that there's one section where you're climbing across this bridge or whatever, and you have all these fans. I thought, okay, there's going to be something where I have to press a like a mini game and I need to like, you know, dodge the fans or wait for the fans to stop and then I can go. But no, it's just a moment for you to like cross and nothing happens except dialogue. And in that, and even then, that dialogue didn't happen for that instance. There was like one fan section where they did have dialogue and another one where you're just walking. And so even though this looks like a flashy combat game, it really feels more like a walking simulator. And it really puts into perspective how important gameplay elements are and how you cannot see good gameplay versus bad or redundant gameplay. And I felt that was very interesting and telling, that even after all this time, it's still difficult to tell apart what a good game might be and what a bad game might be just by looking at something. And again, this isn't necessarily a bad game, it's just a movie game is what it really feels like. They also introduced some new characters and side quests and stuff. Like, they introduced this one kid who's like, oh, hello, chum, I'm a scientist. And he just doesn't add anything to the story. He's just like there. He exists, like, okay, whatever. The whole honeybee segment, you know, I remember that quest you basically had to fetch a bunch of dresses and wigs and whatever so that Tifa or Aerith could like outfit you, and then it's a big surprise to one of them. But that whole honeybee section where Cloud gets a makeover and they make a big deal of it and you have to play like a rhythm mini game, that was not in the original at all. So they just added a lot of stuff into this game, which is like, okay, of course, it's a remake. They're doing whatever they want. So also, it's very interesting how they dealt the whole scene with Don Corneo and his like sex dungeon, and just the weird tension in that scene in the original and in the new one is just very different. Yeah, and it's just like, how are they going to do this? Because there's this whole thing where like Tifa's like, I'm going to cut it off if you don't tell us, you know, where it is. And so I was like, how are they going to do this? And they ended up pulling it off, and it wasn't weird or too distasteful or anything. So I was like, okay, cool, you know. What I really love about this game is you're able to switch as different characters. So you can play as Tifa and use her fists basically to fight enemies. She's a lot of fun to play as. Barrett was really cool because he has this whole thing where he's on an automatic blast, and it's only when He reaches the end of his clip. It ends up like as a charge shot or something. Really interesting dynamics for the different characters. And again, all of the old themes are remixed. Aerith's theme makes a return, and she's able to basically create, a new mood, I guess, and a lot of nostalgia. This is just a bunch of nostalgia bait, really. And after playing the first one, I had no desire to play Rebirth. It was kind of like, oh, okay, I can basically just watch this game. And I've never had that experience where I thought to myself, I'd rather be watching this than playing it. It's just a very weird thing to experience. Again, there's lots of things I'm looking forward to, ironically, in the future FF remake games. One of them being on the third disc, the scene where Cloud falls into the live stream and he loses his mind and he becomes like a mindless mongoloid in a wheelchair in a hospital, and it feels like a piece of like a General Hospital drama. It's just absolutely the most ridiculous tone shift I've ever seen, and I just wonder how they're going to deal with that accurately in this game. I don't care about how hot the characters look or any of that. I want to see the wheelchair sequence. That is going to be my peak for this series. But it's not probably something I'm going to watch on YouTube. It is also kind of cool how they have these very abstract sequences in the original 7 and how they redo them in HD. Maybe there's something about your brain interpreting the characters and the scenes and what they actually look like that make it more engaging and real. But this game, for me, I literally did not care about it at all. Like, it looks the part, it looks amazing, it has, all the right, recipes and whatever. It just doesn't feel like it. Another thing I've also talked about a lot is Cloud's character. I always felt in the original Final Fantasy VII that Cloud as a mercenary had a much more can-do attitude, and it's only until he was like... it was only until Cloud fell into the live stream and, spoilers, Aerith dies, oh my god, that he becomes this very depressed... humble person. Like, he has a sense of humility and this emo like style about him, but that kind of character transformation doesn't happen until Aerith dies near the end of the second disc. So, and then they just introduce him in all media after that point as his endgame character type. So in like Advent Children, it really cemented it, where Cloud was like a depressed emo guy, and it does make sense in that story because Advent Children takes place multiple years after the events of FF7. And so, but people kind of took that, that was Cloud's character as it always has been. And so I felt like in FF7 Remake, it kind of robbed him of a lot of character development because he kind of changed from this arrogant kind of guy to a much more humble attitude after he loses Aerith. And again, like, he's just, I feel that character development was robbed from him. And when people imagine Cloud, he's like a moody, emo like kind of guy, and I always felt that wasn't the case again until the end of FF7. And of course, people, I guess, don't play games to the end or whatever, and it is always hard to tell because they're friggin' like sprites in the original game, so it is very like abstract to begin with. Again, I could go on about how much I love the redesigns of the characters, the Shinra soldiers, everything. My hopes and fears for, the rest of the remake series is kind of whatever. I don't really care. I think it's smart of them that they had integrated as DLC so they could introduce Yuffie early, because she is kind of, part of the main cast, and kind of getting these characters into the story earlier is, I think, would be better just for their character development and characters in general. And again, because they're just doing a bunch of fan stuff, it really doesn't matter what they do. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of interested to see what off the rails stuff that they do with Aerith and Sephiroth and all this other stuff. But on the whole, and on the basic premise, I'm not super excited about playing this series. I'm more excited to watch it, is kind of my conclusion. Overall, the gameplay is serviceable, whatever, And the other thing I'm also super interested in is that Zack is going to be in this game. And Zack was supposed to be dead, which is Cloud's whole motivation for becoming and joining Soldier and having false memories implanted. And there was this one part in FF7 that is just the stupidest effing thing that I thought, maybe I'm just too dumb to get it. But no, I can assure you, after years of actually looking it over, it's the dumbest thing, where Cloud wanted to believe so badly that he was Zack that he actually believed that he was Zack. And that is the dumbest, most unrealistic, unbelievable. And there wasn't magic involved. There wasn't like Mako magic involved that made him believe this. He was just so deluded. He's like, yeah, I'm Zack. And it's like some kid being like, I'm literally Goku, and becoming actually Goku. It makes no sense. It's just so stupid to me as a plot point and a part of this whole story. And now Zack is alive, so now it's kind of weird how that whole thing is going to play out. So I guess I'm partially interested, but I've already played this game, so I feel like I can kick back, relax, and not have to like, you know, deal with it. I can basically be a normie and watch the streams from afar and watch the YouTube Let's Plays and be a passive fan media enjoyer instead of fully engaging with it, which I used to despise, but honestly this scenario calls for that kind of behavior. And I hear a lot of people saying, oh yeah, I've been meaning to watch FF7 Remake, but I haven't got around to it, so, which I just find just very funny in general. Anyway, I think that's all I can really say about it at this point. It's a game I really wanted to like, and I do kind of like it in the fact it doesn't care at all what we think about it. It's going to do its own thing, but yeah, seeing all these old character models and places brought to life, I think is super cool, but again, it's not my thing, and I found the game pretty boring. Anyway, guys, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.